My legacy has been about disrupting from the start. How do I change things? What will people remember me for? What have I done? I always think locally, but build globally. It's a new era. Things need to change. Perspectives need to change. Generations are different. We've had 4 industrial revolutions. The revolutions is friction. Friction, you bring in innovation. We have a very large demographic of older people that are defining the future without any input from the under 25-year-olds. A lot of younger people are graduating from college without ever working. And I think that's a problem. At a very young age, we have to start when people are younger to inspire them that they can be part of the change. I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight because I had to do my real job and then chief of protocol. It was a wonderful experience. You have to maintain the serenity. I have no fear of saying what I think and talking to people. You know, my old boss, Barack Obama, used to say, how can we help more women in those ladders of opportunity? We can build a more peaceful world.
Welcome to Lift. It's a space where we meet extraordinary leaders building a legacy. And actually, this podcast carries its name because of today's guests. Meeting her reminded me of what it means to lift people, ideas, and global communities. It's an absolute pleasure introducing you to my great friend, Natalia Olson-Urtecho. I'll try to share a little bit about her incredible biography and journey, but it's hard to capture Natalia in a few lines. She's a global innovation leader, serial entrepreneur, and former regional administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, serving as Obama's presidential appointee. She was appointed to the U.S. Innovation Advisory Board to advise Congress and the White House on competitiveness and innovation. She's also an incredible urbanist, investor, and advisor in tech startups. She lived across America, Asia, and Europe, and she defines herself as a global citizen. Natalia, what does it mean to be a global citizen?
That's a big question. Thank you, Aida, for inviting me. So the world is small. And I've been very fortunate because my parents were U.S. diplomats, and then I also was part of that world. I lived, in Venezuela, Jamaica, Hungary, Shanghai. And a global citizen is someone that understands all the different aspects, different cultures, and is able to bridge them and is able to understand how people react, how people work, and then trying to find the wonderful things that we can all share. So as a global citizen, I see my job, personally, of creating those bridges. We can learn a lot from what's happening in China. We can learn a lot from what's happening in Mexico, what's happening here in Spain. And I think that in my country, in the U.S., there's lots of case studies that we can share across the world. And I think that when we talk about it in a global perspective, that we understand that we can come to better agreements if we understand each other.
Brilliant. And I think you're very privileged, right, to have lived the diplomat life. It's not for everyone, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Can you share any highlights or also a little bit of learnings? What does it mean to live, to be a child of a diplomat, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny in the U.S. they call we're third culture kids. it's a new term because we are growing up as U.S. citizens, but I'm from my dad is Norwegian American, my mother is Honduran American. And we go out into the world representing the U.S. So we absorb those cultures. We learn the language. My brother, sister, and I all speak with very different accents when we speak in Spanish. So I think the benefit of that is that we have friends from all over the world that we can adapt. And this is really important. How do we adapt? How do we understand that people are not the same as us, that we have different cultures, different religions, different ways of doing things. I'm very fortunate that my parents are very, very, open-minded. And for me, being able to move to a new city And within, a few months, I've made friends. I've invited people to my home. I try to figure out how I can help, right? Because I think what's important is when you are a guest in any city or country that you give back. And I think that's a more global perspective of saying, how do I give back? How do I make my experience something that can help others? And I think that is how we should be behaving in the world that we live today, right now, in geopolitical perspective. How is it that we need to see to the future from a global perspective?
And I think we live in a very interesting era, right? It's an era of change, or a complete change of an era. You've led innovation like across countries and in government, in the private sector, like everywhere you've been. What does innovation mean to you?
Well, for your question, because it's a new era, right? New era means things need to change, perspectives need to change, generations are different. And I always laugh about this idea of Gen X because it's, from 15-year-olds to 28-year-olds, and it's too much, it's too wide. Because a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, 28-year-old don't have much in common because things are changing so quickly. So eras have to be defined in a different perspective. We had, which we called, 4 industrial revolutions. A lot of our, especially in the tech world, we're in the 4th industrial revolution. Okay, but that has been in the last 30, 40 years. But there's new revolutions, and what the revolutions, in that perspective, that word is friction. So you're creating friction, and that friction has a huge influence in younger people, and younger people are the ones who define the new eras, right? 15-year-olds today to the 25-year-olds today, which were born in this century, a very different perspective of what the future is going to be. And I think that from change, I love to talk about changing eras. We are, like you said, at a very interesting crossroads. We have a very large demographic of older people that are defining the future without any input from the under 25-year-olds. And they're thinking that they can change it for good because based on their values of a different era, a very different era. So let's remember in the 50s when Elvis Presley and the Beatles and people were really upset about rock and roll. They were thinking that they are possessed or something like that. And now everyone is it's like, well, I can't believe the kids are so focused on their phones. And it's a different mentality. It's a different era. It's a different way of culture. It's a different way of dealing with society, dealing with the future. I can only imagine when my grandparents and my parents back in those days never thought that this phone would define a different way of doing things, right? And I think we should look at an era as a way of us changing things. There has to be that wonderful friction that I love because I think with friction you bring in innovation. And I believe very much that right now all these different things are aligning in the era. We have to name it. Let's come up with a good name for this new era. And the new eras are not going to be 50, 60 years old. They're now like 20-year-olds, 20-year-old year faces.
Super interesting. And what was Natalia doing when she was 20? Do you remember?
I was in college and I became, when I was in sophomore year, the president of the Latino club of the university, and because things weren't working. So I said, I think that this is not working well, and I advocated to be the president of it. And what was interesting is that the Latino and the Arab club were doing parties all the time. I'm like, okay, how can we work together? How can we do like cool things together? And I always have, I've always been the type of person that connects people. So it became very popular. And we were doing parties, we were doing events, and we were working together at a large university. And I think that's what triggered the idea of how can we have real dialogues of working together. And that kind of, I went from engineering, because I started with engineering, urban systems engineering. And then I decided, I think I like, international relations and politics. That's something that so I switched over from one career to the other in college. And those experiences define what you want to do in the future.
And from what I know, you started working at a very early age.
Yes.
Right? Can you share a little bit about your first job and what did you learn?
So I love working. I like to make money, and that is good.
Me too, huh? Me too.
It's important to make money because we can't pay for anything if we don't make money. So I'm very fortunate that my family has been very much about making us work since we're young. So I would go to South Dakota and I would work in my grandpa's hardware store. And it was about separating worms and, putting the bait and all the fishing gear and pumping gas, because he also had the gas station in the little town in South Dakota. And we would wake up at 6 a.m. And as soon as I could do math and do it well, I would be there working and helping out, and I would get an allowance. So in the U.S., we have this tradition of getting kids to work early. Paper routes, kids go and deliver newspapers in the morning, and then they go to school and they learn that by working hard, they can get $1, that they have to negotiate because, there's some bad people that won't pay for delivery. Then they have to, if they can't do a route, then they have to get their cousin to do the route, or their brother or their sister. And so they have to explain what the route is, and you have to get up early. So it teaches you how to understand what the work ethic is. It teaches you that the value of every dollar or every euro. And it's important, I think, for entrepreneurs to understand that money doesn't come easy, it doesn't grow on trees, and that you really have to work hard at it.
Super interesting. I totally agree with this. And I always studied and worked at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy, right? It's doable, and it teaches you a lot. So in your case, you studied and worked at the same time. Can you share a little bit of what you studied and like what were you working on at the same time, and how your career evolved like in parallel somehow?
Sure. I've always loved to work and study. I later transferred to a university that had the co-op program, the program that you can study and work. I worked every summer. I worked during my semesters. I worked during the masters, and it teaches you balance. It gets you organized. And I think that for my concern is that a lot of younger people are graduating from college without ever working, not even at the supermarket, not even at their grandpa's store. And I think that's a problem for generations to come, because they're not understanding the value of just picking up stuff, packing up from the supermarket, or picking things up and delivering papers, or helping to cut the grass or pick up the snow. I don't know, just stuff that really understands the hard labor of getting us to work. So in that sense, I'm very fortunate to always have been doing that. Of course, it's hard to do that. So I took a year off, and of course my dad was like, okay, you're gonna take a year off, you're coming to work for me. Like, okay, it's not a problem. So that time was in Venezuela, and I got to travel and work. And then I decided, okay, go back to school. Very important. I think that programs today, it's not as important to go to university. I think that a lot of people could do apprenticeships. We did apprenticeship programs where people today, especially, can learn skill sets very quickly for 6 months or a year, especially in advanced manufacturing and cybersecurity in certain industries, because there's such a demand. You don't have to get a degree for 4 years and have to pay all this and all that. I think that there's a lot of new models. I mean, we adopted the apprenticeship program from Germany, and we put money towards it in the Obama administration. And I think this is an important way of looking at education, that it's not only about the higher education, but the advanced education.
Super interesting. And also, I know you studied urbanism, right? And later on, international relations, business. But now you're an advisor in the deep tech world, especially in cybersecurity, which might seem connected, but to me, it's not so obvious, right? Like, how do you transition from being an urbanist to investing in deep tech, right? Like, in your career, I know it's incredible, but can you share a little bit about your journey?
Sure. And I didn't start as an urbanist. I mean, I started at urban systems because I love cities. I lived in so many different cities. So I went from Mexico City, 24 million people, to a small town in Virginia, but it's close to Washington, D.C. But you go from a huge city like that, and you see the issues, the problems that a city like that has. It's a beautiful city, but at that particular time, there was a lot of pollution, so much pollution, and the policies that were happening, the changes weren't fast enough. But at least some changes did happen, and now it's a lot more sustainable. It's a little bit cleaner. So for me, when I started, I thought, how can I change things? I'm a big change maker. I always look at things of, okay, that's not working, so how are we going to change it? And I thought, wow, there's this amazing plant that is taking garbage and it's producing energy. And cities like Mexico City produce a lot of garbage. And this new technology could transform into energy. We don't have to use petroleum. We could use from when you heat it up and you create methane, and you're creating all forms of ways of creating an alternative to energy. I thought, this is amazing. How can we bring new technology into these problems that everyone keeps saying, oh, it's not possible to change? Right? And I think this is where I really was enamored with new technology. Wow, you can change that. So I went and I started studying this. And it was just, for me, thermodynamics and physics was a little bit difficult. So I thought, how can I go on the policy side? All right, change the policy for us to be able to implement those types of industries and new technologies to habilitate that. So in that, from my career perspective, was kind of okay, I can change that. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to go after college to work in Hungary, in Czech Republic, and Poland. So after communism, a whole different life of things. So after 45, 50 years of communism, these countries were reverting back to the West mentality. How do you bring countries like that to be able to emerge, right, and grow and change? It's very tough because you have several generations within communism that want to stay in that, but then you have a younger generations who want to change. They want to be part of the new world in that sense. So for me, it was an eye-opening. I was 25, 26 years old. I lived in Hungary for 4 years, worked across the region, because at the same time, this was a time that NATO was opening up, and those 3 countries were becoming part of NATO. And this was a very interesting perspective, as from the real East to the West. So those countries in the mid, which is the countries that are most affected right now, problems as identification. Because during communism, they were all within a certain realm of ideology, right? And Poland is very different from Hungary, and so is Czech Republic. Different cultures, different history. And for me, it was fascinating. We were able to work with all the different governments, We were able to bring new ideas, right? One of them in specific is we as Americans, we're a very young country. And our culture is very much, I don't want to say Coca-Cola and movies, but people are identified with that. But bringing movie theaters with new movies and new styles and new television shows, it helped bring new ways of thoughts and choices. So we helped build a lot of movie theaters. We translated every comedy show, every show into all the 10 acceding countries, because after NATO, the 10 acceding countries, they were going to become part of the EU in 2001. We wanted to make sure that they also understood the West from an American perspective, not only a European perspective, but a Western perspective from our side. So that was very interesting. And I thought, how easily can we influence people? That's when communication really was happening. How easily can we influence people? And this was 2001, very different to what today is. And so that was just a wonderful experience. So I decided, okay, I'm done. It's interesting. Now I'm going to go and do my master's. And that's when I decided to do urban planning and regional planning, and I'm working on business and mixing business and development, because I thought I would go back to Central Europe. And but my career went another way, and I started a company. I decided, wow, we can do different things. We can design with technology. We can look at ways of new industries, just like we did in Central Europe. Because it's funny, because Pennsylvania and New Jersey, they don't talk to each other so much. Back then, we didn't share the data. I was like trying to figure out, how do we use technology for us to capture the right data? Because we were doing really stupid things like paper surveys. And I brought a little company called SurveyMonkey, and I said, we can do, digital surveys and get 5,000 versus 100. And I always pushed that. I always pushed the envelope. I always said, okay, how can we use new things to get better results? And then I decided, okay, we're good. We've done a lot of good things here, and decided to go to China. And I thought, China is growing tremendously. I start another company, sell 2.01% of the Chinese, can make some money, because China, as I understand cultures and globalization, we can sell, that we can do something in China. And it was fascinating at that time. That's when a lot of these new companies had started, 2007, 8, 9. I worked at the World Expo, News, climate technology. And then Obama asked for folks to come back and come and work in the administration, and so I left. We moved the company to California. I went to Washington D.C. and so I became an advisor, and then an administrator. And then after that, I decided to start another company. So it's always been about starting companies, and also about having a foot on the public sector, so we can have a balance. That balance for me is really important. Politicians need to understand the private sector, and the private sector need to understand the politician side of things. And then, after that, I went to California and got involved in investing, because we had given a lot of funding. Your Horizon funding is based on our SBA funding mechanisms. And I thought investors in Silicon Valley are very Silicon Valley driven, and very US driven. And I thought we need to think about other countries. And then I thought, okay, COVID is coming, and I believe that Europe was a little bit more well positioned. And I moved to Barcelona as well. So I said that really quickly, I think.
Incredible journey, and I have so many questions, of course. But I think you're like a change maker, and you've always led big movements worldwide. One of them was the green economy.
Yes.
And I think it's huge. It's just 2 words, but it's huge. Can you share a little bit about that, and also the challenges that you encountered?
Yes. Well, as a change maker, that balance between being in the private sector and the public sector, really important. While I was doing my master's, I met several of the folks, the mayor, governor, as I was working in a restaurant. And And I also, University of Pennsylvania is a big Ivy League school. It's where Ben Franklin founded our university. And so people were very surprised that I was, working and doing double masters. And I got to meet really amazing people. When folks are starting to think about sustainability and the green economy, it really started in Chicago with Mayor Daley. Mayor Daley decided he was going to do a green roof. And the mayor's like, what? I can do a green roof too. But it was major, just when a mayor of a big city like that says, I am going to go towards this is good. And then Bloomberg, when he was mayor of New York, also he's like, we're going to create the sustainable plan. And then Mayor Nutter of Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is the fifth largest city, I said, we're going to do that too. And so when leadership from the top starts moving that, and then, of course, California is a very sustainable driven, climate driven state. And Van Jones out of San Francisco, Oakland, said, we need to create different policy. We need to create a movement. And so different folks, raised up to the occasion and said, okay, we will lead. We'll lead. And so I was part of a group of leaders in the Philadelphia, New York region. And we said, of course, we'll lead. And I was fortunate enough that I was also planning and zoning commissioner of Philadelphia. That means that we were going to set new laws, how we're going to zone, how we're going to design the city. And within that, the mayor, this particular mayor, who had no chance to win, but he won, said, this is going to be part of my framework. We're going to go ahead and create real sustainable policies. And that's really tough for old cities to say, we're going to weatherize, we're going to put more trees, we're gonna have more people on the streets because we need that balance of community and people understanding that walking versus taking your car, you can exercise, you don't pollute as much, you can use the metro. It's that balance that urban planning creates. It's that let's understand what our resources are, how do we plan and design better. And so the green economy for me was a wonderful opportunity to really bring every age group, which is really important, from little children to older folks. People got behind that, and the marketing is key. So I got, of course, threatened. People threatened to burn. A lot of developers weren't happy because they had to change the way that they had to design houses. They had to change the way of designing access for buses or rail versus just cars. So people were not happy. And I had an old gentleman, coming up to me and telling me, my granddaughter won't get into my Cadillac because you're telling her that I'm killing polar bears. And so I just said, okay, well, I know that granddaughter will grow up to vote, and she'll vote where climate becomes something that is relevant to our policies. And he was very upset because he's like, now I have to buy a Prius, a stupid green car. I was like, well, you'll save on gas. So those are the type of things that the green economy pushed and made you realize that this was not just a conversation of hugging trees, but you also were able to save money. And we can save a lot of money through the green. It's not only green about being sustainable, it's about also saving money. And when the gas prices were going up, people started making decisions of, I'd rather live in a place closer to transit. I'd rather not live in a huge house. I'd rather, be able to buy two apartments in Philadelphia and have my parents be close by because the hospital is 3 blocks away. Why do I have to drive? I can have the theaters near me. I can nurture an urban economy. And so there was a resurgence of urban success because young people were coming back into the city. Because in the U.S., for us, the cities were very much depleted because of really bad policies. And I think folks across the world have decided that we like being in the city. We want that activity. We can leave sometimes and go for the weekend, but the city is the heart of the region. And it's about that connection, that connectivity. People don't think that technology, putting trees, the whole idea of dual use, the whole idea of using that to better design where trees go or where the water is distributed. How do we do that with balancing what's best for the people?
And you've been a serial entrepreneur in US, in Asia, in Europe as well, and you are also an investor across all these countries. What are the main differences of becoming a US-based entrepreneur compared to a European-based entrepreneur? How is the investment landscape, and how does it feel to be an entrepreneur in different countries?
Well, this is very different, unfortunately, but this is where I believe that we can help. And when we were sharing best practices, when we were doing our agreements on patenting between Europe and the US, we brought new ideas, which is a funding idea, right? The idea of how do we bring money to entrepreneurs. So in 2000, we were here working on creating new funding mechanisms, and you guys in Europe launched Horizon Funding in 2012. So it's only been 14 years where you actually have the possibilities. We've been doing it for the last 60 years. But it's how you learn. In the US, being an entrepreneur, you have a lot of freedom. You can go and start. You can register your company very quickly. You don't need to pay taxes on a company that doesn't make any money. Unless you make money, you pay taxes. And you are able to sell your idea much faster, I think, than in Europe. In China, very different, but China is very capitalist as well. As long as you are within a parameter of where the government understands what you're doing and so on, it's a different model, but it's very capitalist. And I think that you as an entrepreneur need to understand the cultural way of doing things. Here, when you go to a family member, it's very hard for them to understand that you're going to go completely nuts and create something different, and that they're going to give you money, family and friends on investment. But slowly and surely, family offices have started here. People have decided that they need to innovate, that they need to create a funding mechanism to attract innovation, to improve their businesses. We're still in the Wild West in the US. We love going out and trying everything. We don't regulate until after. We won't put any pressure on you. We want you to change, to create new ideas. In Stanford, professors are asked to go and start a company, not just to write more papers or more books. It's not theoretical. Businesses are not theoretical. It's good to to understand theory, but business is about selling a product, making sure a customer wants it, and making money in that sense. And we tie in that it's also good for the economy. So it's very different cultures, and you have to be very patient. I used to bring trade delegations from the US to China, and I would have to tell them, look, in China, you have to be very patient. You cannot just come to China and think you're going to start a company. You have to come many, many times. You have to drink a lot of tea, and you have to be able to eat a lot of different strange food, and you have to be able to build a relationship. It's really, really important. So that's the thing. And in Europe, each country is so different in the EU. And if you're going to decide on which country you're going to expand into, you got to understand the way culture is. You have to, like in Spain, you have to go to dinner, you gotta go to breakfast, you gotta go al cafecito, you have to go to el vermouth, you have to all these things. It's like you really gotta meet the family. All those things are important. And so when we look being as an entrepreneur all over the world, respect and humility. You have to be humble, and you can't impose the way we do things in the U.S. in other countries. Unfortunately, that's not happening a lot right now. But that's the attitude that I've always had as an entrepreneur globally.
think there's so much to learn across countries and like different business opportunities. And I have to share a story. Like you invited me once at your place, and the first time you opened the door, I met your lovely dog, Chewy, your guardian. And I saw flip charts and whiteboards all over the rooms in your home. And I'm like, wow, like you have so many ideas and so many people naturally come to you, ask you for advice. And to me, you've always told me like, this is a great idea, but how do you monetize this? Right? And it's something that I never think of, right? That's like the last thing. But I think this is like the American approach. And do you think this is like a common pattern of people here that we don't think that so much about money? And then what do you think?
Well, I think that I don't. I think it's a wonderful thing that Europeans in general think about quality of life before. But you can't pay for that quality of life unless you make money. Just
Mic drop.
so I don't know how you can get to the beach and las cervecitas and have the beer and all that without paying for it. But what I love about Europe is that it's always the citizen at the center before everything, and that's wonderful. Now Europe has the ability to be able to also apply some of these more entrepreneurial perspective of you have to make money in order for you to grow, to scale up. And that's right now my big, I guess, issue is many countries here have very few companies that have grown in the last 20 years. Just one family, plug and play, they're based in California, having 39 unicorns, and they are immigrants from Iran, and they have invested little money in different companies, but they invested and they nurture that. But one family, one company has more unicorns than most of the countries in Europe. So I always bring that example because the American, I guess, example of we are a country of immigrants, and we value that. We all value that, no matter what our president says. And we love the fact that we have that as part of our core. That 23% of the biggest companies in the U.S. are started by immigrants. That's a major thing. And I think Europe has to bring that to their heart, that it is good to have immigrants, that it is good to be open-minded, that it's good for you to invest in the crazy ideas, and also not to remind them of some mistakes that they did in the past. Because what happens here a lot is, if you fail once, wow, you failed already. You failed once. We don't trust you. That shouldn't be the case. I love entrepreneurs that have failed and they have gone back up and they start another company because they've learned. And sometimes here they give all this guilt of, well, you failed, it's never going to happen. And that shouldn't be the case. You should inspire people to get back up, to get started again, to learn from the mistakes, and get going again. This is, I think, that bridge between Europe and the U.S., we can build more of that. But I think that Europe being so wise and their history, 85 years of peace. For me, 85 years ago, they were bombing each other across the Danube and killing. Now there's no boundaries. You ask anyone under 30, why do I have to provide my passport across the border? I mean, it's not something that they fathom. And I think that's a great virtue, and that's something that is that could create success. This amalgamation of cultures and languages and everything can provide a great success and stability. And I know now, and I always call the Europeans the wiser ones, right? They have history and they're the adults in the room right now.
And I think every business is a people business.
Of course.
And at your place, I've been privileged to meet incredible people. And I always think, how does she filter these incredible people? And I don't think it's by title or by financial success in any way. What's your criteria when identifying, someone that can connect with another person, not as much in terms of hard skills, but like in soft skills and like people skills. Like,
And that's the thing, soft skills and people skills right now, especially with the AI revolution, very necessary. Everything is personal, no matter what. It's personal. And I love your comment from earlier of, yes, you can come to my home. There's lots of whiteboards. You can write on the walls if you want, because I want for people to put ideas out there. One thing I do miss about California is I go to a party and I come out with a company, because we tend to brainstorm and say, oh my God, we can do this, we can do this. And very much about that openness. And when I invite people home, because it's a very American home, and I believe that that different people bring different ideas, and those ideas can come together in a good setting of openness. And so if you have an idea, write it up, put it up on the board, talk about it. It's not only about drinking wine and tapas, which is lovely, but I think we have to be productive. And when I invite people, I always say, you surround yourself with smarter people than you.
always.
Always have to do that. You always have to surround with good people that have the same values, and you'd be surprised how many of the diversity of people. We all have different careers or different things we do, but we have essential good values. So I would say, always, if you're a good person who wants to do good, you're always invited. And it's not about picking people. It's about inviting them to connect in a different way, depending on what they want to accomplish. So that's why I have a lot of themes to my parties. And I always think, okay, we're going to let's talk about this in this particular. Let's have a theme. Let's have a different book. Let's have a different author, different leader, an artist, because all of the art, politics, books, tech, they all combine in some way or another. And when you have different people of different opinions, you'd be surprised how, if you bring them to the table and you bring them together and it becomes personal, they are more likely to be able to talk to each other than to fight each other.
Yeah, and fight not in a bad way, like on the
No.
opposite, right?
Yeah, because you bring them together. You actually are saying, okay, we're building a relationship. It's going to be hard for me I will agree to disagree with you. I will, disagree to a certain degree, but I will respect your opinion, because I've met you personally. People in today's world, people build opinions of people based on their likes, on their comments, or their LinkedIn or Facebook or social media, and they already create a profile of a person versus knowing them in a personal way. They're very different from when you meet them and socially. And that's why I always say it's personal. Everything is personal. Business, relationships, in the sense of building something. You don't want to do business with people you don't like. You don't want to build a foundation or organization or something with people that have a very, it's good to get constructive opinions, but you want to be building something with people that provide you their imagination, their intellectual capability. You don't have to agree with them all the time.
And I think you had extremely demanding roles in your life, like, for instance, being the chief of protocol.
Oh, yeah.
At a very, very young age.
Oh, that was fun.
How did you manage that, like, mentally, emotionally, physically? Because you got, like, huge public exposure, right? And you were very young.
Yes, I was very young. Well, I'm very fortunate to have very good parents. And because I worked since I was very young, it helped me really understand that when you're 26 years old, and you're giving a huge responsibility of figuring out the protocol perspective, and it's not just sitting tables and so on. It's about a protocol of countries that are going to become part of a group of defense that is going to define the next accession. That's the perspective of how do you make sure you are completely stable and calm very important because you have crazy people. You have people demanding many different things, but you have to always stay focused. I had the great fortune of meeting Helmut Kohl many times. And I was a kid and I would talk to him like he was just, grandpa. I met the Dalai Lama and sat down and talked to him. I've met at that time every prime minister, all our wonderful people that used to visit from the US, our presidents and our wonderful senators. But it was a time to be very, put very simple. I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight because I had to do my real job and then chief of protocol. And it was a wonderful experience that teaches you to be very calm and stable, that you have to maintain the serenity. And it was just one of the best job opportunities I've ever had. You learn a lot from people. You learn how each person is from a background, from tastes, from relationships. You can't put this particular senator or minister next to this one because they don't align. You can't, figure out. You have to figure out how settings are in a public and, in a way, social perspective, right? Always used to tell everyone, and as a kid, because I was a kid, you cannot talk to the same people. You have 2 minutes, you talk to the next person, and I need for you to get a card, and I need for you to follow up, and we need to follow up with this particular message, and we need to make sure that we stay on message. That's our U.S. interests are at this hand, and so on. And it was a young person telling like an older person that was tough, but and that's why I have no fear. I have no fear of saying what I think and talking to people and be like, okay. So that protocol is definitely taught me a lot for the future, and I really loved that time.
Love it. Very inspirational. And talking about being inspirational, what advice would you give to younger generations? Starting with mine. Yeah. I don't consider myself that young, but yeah, we live probably in a change of an era completely, right? There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I see it as in a positive way. I think AI will bring us tons of opportunities. Mm-hmm. But from your experience, like having led innovation and change across the world, any advice to people like my age that want to thrive and make a positive impact in society today?
Well, I believe very much in the younger generation. I believe very much in you and folks that are getting out of the barn, as we say, like you're getting out there. I think that at a very young age, we have to start when people are younger to inspire them that they can be part of the change, that they're not just have to go and do the same thing, which is a good thing because there's so much information now that inspires them to do that. Now, what I think a lot of younger folks have to do is find a focus, find a passion, figure out something that they really like instead of like doing 100 things. Do 3, that can get them to the next level of what they want to do. Map out. Now we can map it out. We can say, okay, I want to be. And I know that a lot of teenagers, for example, right now they're thinking about, what do I study in the university? What is my next goal? And the parents are like, oh, you have to do this and this and this. Well, I think that young people should either take a year off before they go to the university or whatever and explore the world, get a different perspective. I think that the younger generations have an amazing opportunity because they have the world at their fingertips, that they can get opinions from folks. And I think that when we talk about, for example, you and your age group,
I'm 33 by the way.
Yes, and you're so young. And I think that right now you're at the stage in your life that you can make a huge difference, like you're doing today, of thinking outside the box and not having to do what everyone else does. Okay, that's your differential. You have to differentiate yourself from the rest. because there's a lot of competition, and competition is good, but you have to differentiate yourself from others and put yourself in a position that is not comfortable. Because when we do the same thing as others, then who's going to notice what you're doing? Always, always do the right thing and do it because you believe in it and do it for the greater good. Don't just do it because of yourself. And this is where I feel that a lot of folks just do it for themselves. When you do things, be humble, but remember that your legacy at every age. So I never thought I would have a legacy of like doing the stuff that I have done, but my legacy has been about disrupting from the start. How do I change things? So you have to find your legacy as in a younger time and saying, what will people remember me for? What have I done? And for me, I believe that what I've done, I did it without any clear path. Because I made a lot of mistakes. I decided by the heart sometimes. I didn't plan. That's why I like the whiteboards in my home. Because I started writing stuff. I'm like, okay, let's plan this a little bit better now that I'm over 50. And I keep thinking I'm 30, but now I realize that I'm not. And so you need to figure out that path a little bit better. What you want to do in the next couple of years, and it doesn't have to be. And it's a, like we say, it's a moving plan. It changes, but if you are able to focus on a couple things versus 100 things, I think that'll be really good because there's so much information being thrown at the younger generations, and it's tempting. It's very tempting. So figure out for yourself first before you start going off into every direction. That's what I say.
And just to finish with, I would like to ask you, what are you working on at the moment, and what is the legacy that you're building?
Oh wow! Well, I'm trying.
Big questions.
Yeah,
huh?
I know they're big questions, but that's the thing. We have to answer those big questions because if we don't, then people don't learn from your mistakes. And I always like to talk about the things that didn't go well, right? What didn't work. So folks don't trip and they take some of those lessons. They don't have to take them all, but it's what didn't work. What are some of the big mistakes that I did? And sharing that, I think, is part of my legacy. And I like for people to understand that, oh, that didn't work. So how do you, as a person, as a friend of mine, take my experience and apply it to yourself and say, okay, well, that didn't work for her, so it didn't work for me. It won't work for me either. So when I'm working right now, I worked for a long time on startups, and now I need to work more on scaling up companies. I think, especially in Europe, there's a great opportunity. People want to come to Europe. There's more investment here. There's deep tech. There's a great opportunity. But now the ecosystem has to help scale ups. It doesn't only have to be tech scale ups. It's to scale to a point of just think a little bit bigger. Think how your product, your service, your organization can think globally. Lift up others. Figure out how you become something that will help the world. You always think locally, but build globally. So I've been working more on that, trying to bring more investment to the EU and especially to Spain. I am trying to get more women to believe more in themselves and to be more secure in themselves by bringing them as well together and empowering them. I am building things that I think could help the teenage, especially the teen economy. I believe very much that teenagers need a lot of support. They are our most fragmented demographic, and their future really. I mean, we depend on their future. They're the ones paying that will be paying taxes, and they're the ones building all this new cool stuff. So I think that we need to empower them where they are not just a point in the economy. They are actually a whole new movement. a whole new movement. They are who are going to lead in the next 10 years or so. And so, yeah, working on really helping folks scale, especially personally. So a lot of women need to scale those ladders of opportunity, right? And my old boss Barack Obama used to say, "How can we help more women in those ladders of opportunity? If we can have 10 more, then more 10 times 10 times 100, and so on, we can build a more peaceful world and a better place."
Incredible. And I just have a wish. I hope you have your own podcast because you have so much to share and you're so inspirational.
I love your podcast. It's awesome. You're
I'm
lifting
trying.
people.
I'm trying. And also a book. It would be great. Maybe it's in progress.
Yes,
but
maybe.
yeah, I mean, every time I meet you, it's a privilege and it's a master's in different topics. So thanks a lot, Natalia. And just to finish with, I have some questions and you can just pick one.
Sure.
And you can read it and answer.
Oh, I get to pick. Oh, boy, cards. Vale, vamos a ver.
A ver.
Let's go. Who lifts you up? That's a wonderful question. It's people like you that lift me up. Really. I know. Honestly, you're doing this out of because you wanna learn, because you wanna meet good people and lift people up. So young people, well, every age, but people who want to disrupt and want to change things are the ones that lift me up every day.
Bueno. Thank you so much, Natalia. Let me hug you.
Thank you.
You're the best.